Rain fell like broken glass against the pavement, slicing the Chicago night into fragments of silver and shadow. Ava Monroe ran through the storm, her breath ragged the sound of her heels, echoing between the walls of the narrow street. Her coat clung to her, soaked through her mascara, streaking down her cheeks like black tears. Behind her came the voice she feared most, Dylan Reed, the man who had once sworn to love her more than life itself, was now chasing her through the rain like prey. He was drunk again, angry again, and this time she knew if he caught her, it would not end with words. The echo of his rage bounced off the alley walls. "You think you can just walk away from me, Ava, after everything I gave you." She turned a corner and nearly slipped her palms, hitting the cold brick. The neon sign of a closed diner flickered red above her head. She whispered to herself, "If he finds me, I'm dead." The words disappeared into the wind. She looked around, heart pounding, searching for somewhere to hide. But the street was empty, except for a black SUV parked under a flickering street lamp. Its headlights were off, but a man stood beside it, tall and still, the kind of presence that both frightened and calmed in the same heartbeat. He was checking his phone, unaware of the chaos about to collide with him. The sound of Dylan's footsteps grew louder. Ava's chest tightened. She had seconds. In one reckless impulse, born of terror, not thought, she ran straight toward the stranger. Before he could react, she rose on her toes, grabbed the lapels of his coat, and pressed her lips to his. The world froze. For a single impossible second, there was nothing but rain, her trembling hands, and the warmth of a stranger's breath. His body stiffened, startled, but he didn't push her away. When Dylan rounded the corner, what he saw made him stop in his tracks. Ava, the woman he believed belonged to him, was kissing another man in the middle of the street. Shock flickered across his face. Then something darker. He spat into the puddles, cursed, and turned back into the storm. Ava kept her eyes closed until his footsteps disappeared. When she finally pulled away, her hands dropped to her sides. The stranger stared at her, rain dripping from his hair, his voice low and calm. "You sure know how to make an entrance." Ava's lips trembled. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do. You just saved me. You have no idea." His expression softened. He took off his coat and placed it around her shoulders, the scent of cedar and rain clinging to the fabric. Under the harsh glow of the streetlight, she saw his face for the first time. Early 30s, sharp jawline, eyes like winter sky. There was power in his silence, but also sorrow, as if he carried ghosts she would never know. "Are you hurt?" he asked quietly. She shook her head, unable to speak. Her body was still shaking. "You should go somewhere safe," he said. "Chicago's not kind to the lost at this hour." She nodded, hugging the coat tighter around her. "Thank you," she whispered. "I won't forget this." He gave a faint nod, as if to say he didn't expect her to. As she turned to leave, she glanced back once more. The stranger stood motionless, rain pooling around his shoes, watching her disappear into the darkness. In another life, she thought maybe she would have stayed to ask his name. But this wasn't that kind of night. The storm swallowed her. He looked down at the lipstick stain, faintly visible on his collar, touched it once, and let out a breath that felt heavier than the rain itself. Then he opened the door of his SUV and drove away. Ava found herself walking, without knowing where she was going, the city blurring around her. She could still taste rain and adrenaline. Her fingers trembled against the stranger's coat. Somewhere inside, she felt something shift, a fragile awareness that life as she knew it had already changed. She didn't know his name, but his eyes stayed with her. They had seen her fear and not looked away. When she finally reached the subway entrance, she stopped under the overhang, breathless, half laughing, half crying. "What have I done?" she whispered. But the rain answered for her, drumming against the city, washing away the last trace of Dylan's voice. Above her, thunder rolled like a closing curtain. And somewhere across town, in a penthouse that scraped the edge of the skyline, Ethan Cole poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared out into the same storm. He didn't know why. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman who had kissed him without a word. He only knew that something about her eyes, haunted, desperate, alive, had followed him home. The rain pressed against the window like a heartbeat. He raised his glass slightly as if to toast a secret. "To strange nights," he murmured, then almost smiling, "and stranger women." Outside, lightning cut through the clouds, illuminating the city's veins. The storm would pass by morning, but neither of them would ever be the same again. Voice over in Emma's tone. That night she thought she escaped danger, not knowing she had just met her fate. 3 days later the rain was gone, but its memory still clung to Ava Monroe like a second skin. Chicago shimmered under a pale morning light, busy and indifferent. She stood outside the mirrored doors of Cole Enterprises, clutching her portfolio, rehearsing her answers in silence. This interview was supposed to be a new start, a clean page after the chaos she had left behind. She had told herself she was ready, that the bruises had faded, and the fear had loosened its grip. But her reflection still looked unsure, as if the woman staring back didn't quite believe her own story. She straightened her blazer and stepped inside. The lobby was a cathedral of glass and steel, everything reflecting light and authority. She signed in at the reception, trying to ignore the faint tremor in her hands. The receptionist smiled politely. 10th floor, marketing division, the elevators to your right." Ava nodded, thanked her, and pressed the button. The doors slid open with a soft chime. She stepped in alone at first until a hand stopped the door. "Hold that." The voice was deep, calm, familiar. Ava froze. Her eyes lifted, and there he was. The stranger from that night. He was wearing a dark gray suit, now dry, composed, powerful, the kind of presence that turned heads even in a room full of executives. His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat neither spoke. Then one corner of his mouth curved. "You again." She managed a nervous laugh. "Guess fate doesn't take no for an answer." "Apparently not," he said, stepping in. The doors closed behind them with a metallic sigh. The elevator hummed softly as it began to rise, the sound of the city fading away. Ava stared straight ahead, pretending to check her phone, but her pulse betrayed her calm. The confined space was charged with silence, the kind that vibrates with things unsaid. She could feel his gaze on her, steady and curious. "You look different without the rain," he said. She glanced up. "You look less mysterious in daylight." He chuckled quietly. "That's disappointing. Depends on who you ask," she replied before she could stop herself. The numbers above the door blinked. 6, 7. The air between them thickened. She wanted to ask his name, to thank him properly, but words felt dangerous. The elevator slowed with a chime, stopping at the 10th floor. Relief and regret collided in her chest. The doors slid open, and a man in a navy suit stepped in. "Top floor, sir?" he asked the stranger. Yes, the man replied. Ava blinked. Top floor. That was the executive level. She stepped out, forcing a polite smile. Well, thanks again for that night. He nodded, his expression unreadable. Try not to make a habit of kissing strangers. I'll do my best, she said, and the doors closed between them. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and walked down the corridor toward the conference room. The interview was already running behind schedule. A woman with a headset ushered her in. Mr. Cole will see you now. Ava's mind stumbled over the name. Mr. Cole. Yes, the woman said, gesturing toward the glass office at the end of the hallway. Ava straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked in. When the door closed behind her, she froze. The man from the elevator sat behind the desk, flipping through a file. He looked up slowly, his tone cool, controlled, almost amused. Miss Monroe, you're late. Her throat went dry. There must be some mistake I didn't know, that I was the CEO, he interrupted smoothly. Most people don't until it's too late. Her heart pounded. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. Relax, he said, leaning back. I'm not offended, I'm intrigued. He gestured toward the chair opposite his. Sit, she obeyed, still dazed. He skimmed her resume. Public relations background, crisis management. You've worked with entertainment clients, correct? Yes, she said softly. Mostly independent artists and small brands. Good, he said. Cole Enterprises could use someone who knows how to handle unpredictable people. His eyes lifted to hers, and she knew exactly what he meant. The room felt smaller. She tried to regain composure. Why me? There must be 100 better candidates, probably, he said. But I don't hire resumes. I hire instincts. And you seem to have good ones when you're not running through traffic. Her cheeks flushed. That was a bad night. I've had worse, he said quietly. There was something in his voice, an edge of sorrow, maybe guilt, that made her look up. For a brief moment, she saw past the power and the polish into something fragile beneath. He broke the gaze first. You can start Monday. Assistant position under marketing reporting directly to me. She blinked. I'm sorry, are you saying I'm hired? He stood, offering his hand. Let's see if you handle pressure better than surprises. She hesitated, then took his hand. It was warm, steady, real. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Ethan, he corrected. At least when we're not in meetings. Understood. Their hands lingered a second longer than necessary before she withdrew. As she left the office, she caught her reflection in the glass wall, hair slightly tousled, eyes wide, with something that wasn't fear anymore. Maybe curiosity, maybe something she didn't dare name. Down the hall she heard him speak to his assistant. Reschedule my afternoon. I have another meeting. With who, the assistant asked. Myself, he said, and the door shut. In the elevator, Ava exhaled and smiled faintly for the first time in months. Maybe fate wasn't cruel after all. Maybe it was just dramatic. When she reached the ground floor, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Welcome to Cole Enterprises. Don't be late next time. She stared at the screen, then laughed softly. You're unbelievable, she murmured. Outside the city glimmered with possibilities. She looked up at the tower one last time before walking into the morning. Somewhere high above, Ethan stood by the window, watching her disappear into the crowd. The rain had stopped, but the memory of that night lingered like a ghost between them. Voiceover in Emma's tone. She didn't know if he pitied her or saw something she didn't see in herself. But either way, fate had just closed the doors behind her. The first weeks at Cole Enterprises felt like stepping into a different universe. Ava moved through glass corridors where everything gleamed, and everyone seemed to know exactly who they were and how much they were worth. Ethan Cole was everywhere, in meetings on screens, in conversations whispered around coffee machines. His presence carried a quiet authority that made people straighten their backs and lower their voices. To her, he was both impossible to understand and impossible to ignore. He treated her with the same composed detachment he gave everyone, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker that lingered too long, a silence that seemed to speak only when she was near. She told herself it was just her imagination. After all, he was her boss, a billionaire, a man carved from stone and secrets. But then there were moments that made her doubt the distance he kept. Once during a morning briefing, a senior manager made a snide remark about her lack of corporate experience. Before she could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the room. "If I hired her, that means she's qualified." "Anyone have a problem with my judgment?" Silence. The man shrank in his chair. Ava didn't say a word, but when the meeting ended, she caught Ethan glancing her way as if to make sure she was okay. She wanted to thank him, but he just turned and walked away. It became a pattern, his quiet protection, his unspoken care. At first, she thought it was pity. Then late one evening, when the office was nearly empty, she realized it was something else. She was in the elevator, arms full of reports, exhausted. The doors began to close, just as Ethan stepped in. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the elevator filled the space between them. She could feel the weight of his gaze. "You're still here," he said. "Deadline," she replied. "And you deadlines too," he murmured. Then without warning, the lights flickered and went out. The elevator jolted to a stop. Ava gasped, grabbing the railing. "It's okay," Ethan said calmly, pulling out his phone for light. "Just a temporary outage." But her pulse raced uncontrollably. She hated confined spaces. Dylan used to lock her in their bathroom during his rages. The memory flashed before she could stop it. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to breathe. Ethan noticed immediately. "Ava." She didn't answer. "Hey," he said, stepping closer. "You're safe, I promise." His voice was low, steady, anchoring her back to the present. She forced herself to meet his eyes, and what she saw there wasn't command or arrogance. It was kindness, genuine, unguarded kindness. He extended his hand. "Breathe with me." She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, grounding. Slowly, she matched his breathing until the panic subsided. The lights flickered back on, and the elevator began to move again. She realized she was still holding his hand. He noticed too, but didn't pull away until the doors opened. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once, any time. She stepped out first, but as the doors closed, she caught his reflection in the mirrored panel, watching her just as he had that night in the rain. That image followed her home. Later, as she curled up on her couch with a cup of tea, she saw the bouquet on her doorstep. White lilies, her least favorite flowers. A note was tucked between them. "Miss me, you can't hide forever." Her heart dropped. Dylan. She slammed the door, locked it twice, and sat down shaking. She wanted to call the police, but stopped herself. Dylan was clever, charming. He always knew how to twist the truth. She stared at her phone thumb, hovering over Ethan's number, then put it down. She couldn't drag him into her mess. Not him, not now. The next morning she arrived early, determined to bury her fear under work. But when Ethan entered the conference room, she could tell something was different. His usual composure was sharper, more guarded. He sat across from her during a presentation, his gaze unreadable. When their eyes met, he said quietly, "Rough night." She froze. "What do you mean? You look like you haven't slept." "Just deadlines," she lied. He studied her for a long moment, but didn't press. Later that afternoon, he called her into his office. "Close the door." Her stomach knotted. She obeyed. He gestured toward the window. "You know, when I first hired you, I wasn't sure if you could handle this place." "I know," she said. "I wasn't sure either." His lips twitched, almost a smile. "But you did. You're proving people wrong, including me." She blinked. "That sounds dangerously close to a compliment." "Don't get used to it," he said. "I don't give them often." For the first time, they both laughed. It was small, but it broke something in the air, the distance, the formality. For a brief, fragile second, they weren't CEO and assistant. They were just two people sharing the same breath. When she left his office, she found herself smiling, unaware that Ethan was still watching her from the window. His expression softening in a way no one in the building had ever seen. That night, rain began to fall again, light and steady. Maiva sat by her window, thinking about the man who had become the storm inside her calm. She didn't understand why his voice lingered in her mind, why his words echoed when she closed her eyes. Maybe it was safety. Maybe it was something more dangerous, the feeling of being seen. Across town, Ethan sat in his penthouse, staring at a folder on his desk, labeled Security Review. Inside were reports about threats made against certain employees. One name caught his attention, Dylan Reed. He exhaled slowly, remembering the fear in Ava's eyes that night in the elevator. He closed the folder and poured another drink, the ice clinking softly. "You're safe," he whispered to no one. "I promise." Voiceover in Emma's tone. "You can't heal when you're still hiding from your wounds. But sometimes the right person doesn't ask you to explain your scars. They simply hold the light long enough for you to see they're still there." The morning sunlight cut across Ethan's office, like a blade slicing through the glass and falling over the polished wood desk where he sat, unread emails piling up beside his untouched coffee. His phone vibrated again, the same number flashing on the screen, his mother's. He sighed and answered. Margaret. Her voice was sharp as ever clipped, with the authority of someone who had built an empire from nothing. "You ignored my calls all week." "I've been busy," he said, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Busy doesn't build trust, Ethan. The shareholders are nervous. Your father's gone, and they see a single man at the head of a billion-dollar company. They don't want power, they want stability. Find someone to stand beside you before the gala." "You mean a fiancé," he said dryly. "Call it what you want," she replied. "You know how this world works. Appearances are half the war." The call ended before he could respond. He leaned back, staring at the city that never stopped moving. The truth was, he hated the game, the dinners, the lies, the women who smiled, because they recognized his last name, not his soul. But he knew his mother was right. Perception was currency. And right now he needed it. Later that afternoon, he walked into the marketing division unannounced. Heads turned, conversations died mid-sentence. Ava looked up from her desk, startled. He approached her with that same measured calm that always made her nervous. "Lunch," he said simply. She blinked. "I'm sorry, lunch. You do eat right." His tone was neutral, but his eyes weren't. She hesitated, glancing at her screen. Is this work-related? Let's say yes, he replied. It'll make you feel better. They ended up in a quiet restaurant overlooking the river, the kind of place where time slowed down and conversations stayed private. Ethan ordered for both of them without asking. Ava raised an eyebrow. You always make decisions for people. Only when I don't have time to watch them make the wrong ones, he said deadpan. She smirked despite herself. You're impossible. And yet you're still here. That's because you're my boss, she shot back. Technically, I could fire you for insubordination. Technically, she said, meeting his gaze, you won't. He leaned back, smiling faintly. You're right, I won't. Their meals arrived, steam rising between them like a fragile truce. For a while they ate in silence. Then Ethan set down his fork. I need a favor. Ava frowned. A favor, yes. Something unusual. He hesitated, uncharacteristically unsure. My mother's insisting that I show up to the annual gala with a partner. Someone trustworthy. Someone who won't turn it into a circus. You want me to find someone? No, he said evenly. I want you to be that someone. She blinked. You're joking, I'm not. You want me, your employee, to pretend to be your girlfriend. Not pretend, just act the part for a few weeks. Public appearances, events, the gala. It'll help stabilize the company's image. And what's in it for me? She asked, arms crossed. Experience, he said with a smirk. Networking, an obscene bonus if it works. That sounds like blackmail, she said. It's business, he countered. You of all people should understand image. She hesitated, torn between logic and disbelief. You could ask anyone. Why me? His eyes softened the armor, slipping for a moment. Because you're the only one I trust not to want anything from me. Silence. The weight of his words hung between them, heavy and honest. Ava looked away, her pulse quickening. And what if someone finds out it's fake? They won't, he said simply. I'll make sure of it. She studied him. And if I say no, then I'll respect that, he said, leaning back. But I think you'll say yes. Why? Because you're not afraid of storms. You just pretend you are. He left the table, leaving her with the bill and a heart that wouldn't stop pounding. That night, Ava sat by her window again, staring at the city lights reflected in the river. His words replayed in her head over and over. She wasn't afraid of storms. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was just tired of running from them. The next morning, she walked into his office before she could change her mind. I'll do it, she said. Ethan looked up from his laptop unsurprised. Any conditions? One, she said. No real feelings, just business. His lips curved slightly. Agreed. And if anyone asks, you're my girlfriend, he said smoothly, standing. Congratulations, Miss Monroe. You've just become the most talked about woman in Chicago. She rolled her eyes. Lucky me. You have no idea, he murmured under his breath. Over the next few days, the transformation began. He sent a stylist to her apartment, arranged fittings, and even taught her how to handle the press. She hated every second of it, but couldn't deny the thrill of seeing herself in the mirror, confident, composed, untouchable. Each rehearsal, each meeting drew them closer, though neither admitted it. Once during a photo shoot for a charity event, he adjusted the clasp of her necklace, his fingers brushing the back of her neck. She shivered, and he noticed. Cold, he asked quietly. Something like that. She replied, unable to look away. Their eyes met in the mirror, two people pretending it was just business. That night, as she lay in bed, She realized she hadn't thought about Dylan all day. The fear that once defined her was fading, replaced by something far more dangerous, the pull of someone she wasn't supposed to feel anything for. Across the city, Ethan stood by his window, again whiskey in hand, watching the lights blur into gold. His mother's words echoed in his mind, but all he could see was Ava, fierce, defiant, alive. He smiled to himself, a rare, quiet thing. Maybe this deal would cost him more than he expected. Voiceover in Emma's tone. They both thought it was just a deal, but love doesn't read contracts, and some hearts were never meant to stay strictly professional. The night of the Cole Enterprises annual charity gala arrived draped in gold and expectation. The ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel glittered like a crown under 1,000 chandeliers, filled with the hum of laughter, champagne, and carefully measured ambition. Cameras flashed, diamonds caught the light, and reputations were bought and sold with every handshake. Ava Monroe stood near the entrance, breathing slowly as stylists fussed over her hair and makeup one last time. The red gown Ethan had chosen for her shimmered against her skin like liquid fire, its neckline bold but not indecent, its cut elegant enough to make her look like she had always belonged among the powerful. She had never worn anything so beautiful, and somehow it terrified her. Ethan appeared beside her a moment later, dressed in a tailored black tuxedo that looked like it had been built around his frame. He adjusted his cufflinks without looking at her. "Ready?" he asked quietly. For what? She whispered back. "To lie beautifully." His lips twitched at the corner, a ghost of a smile. He offered his arm and she took it, her hand trembling only slightly. As they walked into the ballroom, the crowd parted, eyes turning toward them, murmurs spreading like wildfire. "Who's that with him? He's finally dating someone." "She's gorgeous." Ava felt their stares like heat against her skin. Ethan leaned in, voice low. "Smile. They can smell fear." She shot him a sideways glance. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "A little." He raised his glass to a nearby investor, his expression unreadable. Together they moved through the crowd, like a perfectly rehearsed illusion, the powerful billionaire and his stunning partner, untouchable and magnetic. It worked. Every gaze softened, every rumor twisted in their favor. Ava played her part, flawlessly, laughing. At the right moments leaning in when Ethan spoke, pretending this wasn't the same man whose eyes she dreamed about at night. During a lull in the music, a tall woman in a silver gown approached. Margaret Cole. Her presence was unmistakable posture, straight expression, sharp diamonds colder than her smile. So she said, her voice smooth as glass, "This is the woman who tamed my son, Ava." Straightened every instinct, screaming to be polite. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Cole." "I'm sure it is." Margaret said, her gaze sweeping over Ava like an appraisal. "And what is it you do?" "Miss Monroe, Public Relations," Ava replied evenly. "I suppose that's convenient," Margaret murmured, "considering my son's reputation." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Mother." "Relax, darling," she said lightly. "I'm simply curious. Curiosity can be cruel." Ava said softly, her voice calm but steady. For a moment, the older woman's smile faltered. Ethan looked at Ava, surprise flickering across his face. When his mother drifted away, he turned to her. "You shouldn't have said that." "Why not?" Ava replied. She needed to hear it. "You're going to get yourself killed at one of these things." "Maybe," she said with a small smile, "but at least I'll die honest." He chuckled quietly, shaking his head. "You're impossible. So I've been told." The music shifted, then a slow waltz filling the air. Ethan set down his glass and extended his hand. "Dance with me. You don't have to keep up the act," she said. "Maybe I want to." She hesitated, then took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain. As they moved onto the floor, the world around them blurred. The lights dimmed, the crowd faded, and all that remained was the rhythm of the music and the space between their hearts. He was a graceful dancer, leading with effortless confidence, and she followed her gown, sweeping across the marble like a whisper. "You look like trouble," he murmured. "Then why are you still holding me?" she replied, meeting his gaze. His eyes softened. "Because I don't want to let go." The words hit her harder than they should have. For a moment, the lines between truth and pretense disappeared. She could feel his heartbeat through his chest, the faint scent of cedar and rain clinging to him like memory. Around them, applause rippled as the song ended. They stepped apart, breathless, pretending nothing had happened. But everything had. Across the room, unseen by them, a man in a dark suit watched from the shadows. Dylan Reed. His smile was wrong, too calm, too patient. He had waited for this moment, followed the whispers, the photos, the name, Ava Monroe, in every gossip column. Seeing her in another man's arms ignited something feral in him. He whispered to the woman beside him. Sophie, the jealous employee Ethan had once reprimanded, and she nodded, slipping away into the crowd. Dylan's gaze returned to Ava, his jaw clenched. "You think you can hide behind him," he muttered. "You think money makes you safe." On the dance floor, Ava suddenly felt a chill crawl up her spine. Ethan noticed. "What is it?" "Nothing," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "Just tired." He searched her face, unconvinced, but didn't push. "We'll leave soon," he said. 5 minutes, she nodded, relieved. As he went to speak with a donor, Ava stepped outside for air. The night was cool, the city lights shimmering against the dark river. She leaned against the railing, closing her eyes, unaware of the figure watching from across the street. Inside, Ethan turned to find her gone. A strange unease prickled through him. He excused himself and followed. When he found her by the terrace, she looked lost in thought, the wind playing with her hair. He stood beside her quietly. "You disappeared," he said. "Old habit," she replied, "when things get too loud." He glanced at her eyes, softening. "You handled yourself well tonight." "I was terrified," she admitted. "You didn't look it. That's the secret of PR," she said, with a half smile. "Lie beautifully." He smiled back, his voice low. "Then tonight you were perfect." They stood there in silence, the hum of the city below them, two people pretending the world couldn't touch them. But from across the street, a camera shutter clicked, once capturing them, framed by gold and darkness. In that single flash, the perfect illusion was born, and so was the beginning of its undoing. Voiceover in Emma's tone. In a room full of lies, she played her part too well. What she didn't know was that every mask she wore tonight was already cracking, and someone in the shadows was waiting to pull it apart. The photo hit the tabloids by morning. A grainy shot of Ava and Ethan on the balcony, standing close, his hand barely grazing her back. The headline read, "Billionaire CEO's secret lover who is Ava Monroe." Her phone exploded with notifications before she even got out of bed. She turned it off, her heart sinking. At the office, whispers followed her through every corridor, curiosity disguised as politeness. People smiled too much or not at all. She felt their judgment like static. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, Ethan was already waiting in his office suit, immaculate expression unreadable. "Close the door," he said. She obeyed. He slid a tablet across the desk. The article glared up at her. "Tell me you didn't talk to anyone." "Of course not," she said, voice tight. "You think I'd do this? I don't know." He replied, his tone colder than she'd ever heard. "Someone did." "Then find them," she said. "Don't look at me like that." His eyes flickered something wounded beneath the ice. "You were the only one there that night, Ava." The accusation cut deep. "Do you really think I'd use you for attention?" After everything, he hesitated, then turned away. "This company's stock dropped 3 points this morning. Investors are nervous. My mother's furious. Let her be." Ava snapped, surprising herself. "You care too much about the wrong people." His jaw tightened. "And you don't care enough about consequences." The words hit harder than he intended. She grabbed her bag and left before he could stop her. Outside, cameras waited like vultures. She ducked into a cab, ignoring the shouts. The city felt smaller, colder, filled with eyes she couldn't escape. When she reached her apartment, she found an envelope taped to her door. No address, no signature. Inside was a photo her standing beside Ethan at the gala, but altered. The image was cropped and captioned with a single sentence, scrawled in black marker, "He'll leave you like I should have." Her blood ran cold. "Dylan." She tore the photo in half and threw it away, but her hands wouldn't stop shaking. That night she couldn't sleep. Every sound felt like a threat. Every shadow like a memory. Meanwhile, in his penthouse, Ethan stared at the same headline again. Anger twisting in his chest. He wasn't angry at her, not really. He was angry at how easily he believed the worst, but he didn't know how to stop being the man who expected betrayal. His mother had raised him on power and suspicion. Trust in his world was a liability. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ava the way she'd looked at him on the terrace, raw and honest, too real to fake. He rubbed his temples, frustration eating at him. When his assistant Sophie appeared at the door holding a USB drive, he barely looked up. "What is it, proof?" she said, eyes gleaming. "Of who leaked the photo?" He took it, skeptical. "And you just happened to find this, call it loyalty," she said with a smile. "I hate seeing you embarrassed." He inserted the drive and played the clip. Security footage from the gala, a figure slipping through the crowd holding a phone. Blonde hair, red dress, Ava. Ethan froze. The timestamp matched. "She recorded us," Sophie whispered, pretending sympathy. "I'm sorry, sir. I thought she was different too." Ethan said nothing. The footage was convincing, too perfect, but something inside him twisted with doubt. Still, by morning, the rumor spread through every corner of the company. Employees whispered that Ava had sold the story. By noon, Ethan called her into his office. She stood straight, proud, even in exhaustion. "Is this about the photo?" she asked. "It's about trust," he said quietly. "We reviewed security footage, and it shows you recording us." "That's impossible," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't." "Don't lie to me. I'm not lying." "Then how do you explain this?" He turned the screen toward her. Her stomach dropped. The image was unmistakable, her dress, her hair, but she knew she hadn't been there. "It's fake," she said, trembling. "Someone set me up." "Who?" "Dylan," she whispered. "My ex. He's been following me. Please, Ethan, you have to believe me." His face softened for a heartbeat, then hardened again. "I can't risk it. You can't or you won't," she asked bitterly. "Both." The silence was brutal. "You're suspended until further notice," he said. "Security will escort you out." Her throat tightened. "After everything I've done for you." "This isn't personal," he said coldly. "It feels personal. That's your mistake." She wanted to scream, to tell him how much she had trusted him, how much he had already meant to her, but she didn't. She turned and walked out, head held high, past the stairs and whispers. Outside, the rain had returned, soft but relentless. She stepped into it without an umbrella, her shoes sinking into puddles. Behind her, through the glass walls of the tower, she could see him still standing there, rigid, unmoving, watching her leave. The wind tore through her hair, and she let it. For the first time, she didn't try to hide her tears. On the 24th floor, Ethan stood in silence long after she was gone. The footage replayed again on the screen, but something about it bothered him, a small detail, barely visible. A reflection in the mirror behind the woman in red. Blonde hair, yes, but Sophie's necklace, the same one she wore every day. He realized too late. He slammed his fist against the desk, rage and regret colliding. Down below, Ava disappeared into the storm. Voiceover in Emma's tone. "When trust breaks, silence screams louder than betrayal, and sometimes the ones we push away are the only ones still fighting for us." The small town of Lake Haven was the kind of place where time forgot to move. Old diners, crooked mailboxes, and a single traffic light that flickered more out of habit than purpose. Ava Monroe arrived there 3 days after leaving Chicago, carrying one suitcase and a silence that weighed more than her belongings. She rented a room above a flower shop, owned by a kind widow who didn't ask questions. Every morning she made coffee, stared at the lake, and tried to convince herself she wasn't waiting for anything or anyone. She told herself this was peace, but it felt more like exile. The news had spread too fast to fight. By now, everyone in Chicago had read the story of the assistant who betrayed the billionaire. The scandal had gone viral, and though she avoided the internet, the headlines found her anyway. From gala to gutter, Ethan Cole's fall from grace. The company stock had stabilized, but Ethan's reputation had cracked. She should have been angry at him for not believing her. Instead, she was angry at herself for caring that he didn't. On the 4th morning, rain swept over the lake. She sat by the window with her notebook writing letters she never planned to send. Ethan. "I didn't leak the photo. I wanted to tell you everything about Dylan, but I was afraid you'd see me differently. I was right." The words blurred before she could finish. She tore out the page and threw it away. That night, the rain turned into thunder. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. She didn't know that in Chicago, Ethan Cole sat alone in his penthouse, with the lights off, a half-empty glass of whiskey beside him. He hadn't been to the office in 2 days. The footage haunted him. He had replayed it so many times that the lie began to fall apart. He finally saw the reflection clearly. Sophie's necklace, the flash of her manicured nails. He had fired her immediately, but the damage was already done. Ava was gone, and he had no right to ask for forgiveness. His phone buzzed with messages from his mother, his board, his investors, but he ignored them all. He couldn't think about business when all he could see was her face. That last day, her voice trembling with disbelief. "You can't or you won't." He had both answers and both were wrong. He wanted to call her, to say her name out loud, just to see if it still hurt. But before he could, his phone rang again, this time an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something in him knew he had to. Mr. Cole said, a man's voice. "This is Detective Harris, CPD. We thought you'd want to know. A man named Dylan Reed escaped custody last night. Ethan's hand tightened around the phone. Escaped? He attacked an officer during transfer. He's armed. We believe he may target a woman named Ava Monroe. You're listed in her emergency contact file. Ethan didn't even hang up. He was already grabbing his coat. In Lake Haven, Ava woke to a knock on the door. It was past midnight. The sound was soft at first, then louder, insistent. She froze. The widow downstairs didn't stay up this late. The knock came again, 3 slow beats. Her pulse spiked. She approached quietly barefoot, her shadow trembling on the wall. "Who is it?" Silence. Then a voice low and too familiar. "It's me, baby. Open up." Her body went cold. "Dylan," she whispered, "you didn't think I'd let you disappear, did you?" His tone was gentle, almost sweet, and that scared her most. She backed away, scanning for a weapon. The knocking turned violent, the wood splintering. "You ruined me, Ava," he hissed through the crack. "You think you can hide with that rich bastard. He's not here now, is he?" The door gave way with a crash. She ran, barefoot across the hall, down the back stairs, heart pounding so hard. She couldn't hear the thunder anymore. She burst into the alley behind the shop, rain soaking her in seconds. Dylan followed, limping, a wild grin on his face. "You can run," he shouted, "but I always find you." Headlights cut through the rain at the end of the street. A car swerved into view, brakes screeching. Ethan stepped out before it stopped moving, rain plastering his hair to his face. His eyes locked on Ava, first, then on the man chasing her. "Dylan Reed," he said evenly, "you've made a mistake. You must be the billionaire." Dylan sneered, raising a knife that glinted under the streetlight. "Guess the papers didn't lie. Neither did she." Ethan said, "You did." Dylan lunged, but Ethan was faster, tackling him to the ground. The knife clattered across the pavement. They struggled in the mud fists, colliding rain, mixing with blood. Ava screamed, reaching for the weapon, but Dylan broke free and swung a punch that sent Ethan sprawling. "You don't deserve her," Dylan snarled. "You're just another man who'll break her." Ethan spat blood, pushing himself up. "Maybe, but I'll never hurt her." The knife flashed again. Ava ran forward without thinking, shoving Dylan just as the blade cut across Ethan's arm. The sound of sirens pierced the chaos. Dylan turned toward the noise, eyes wild. "This isn't over," he shouted, stumbling into the darkness as police cars rounded the corner. Ava dropped beside Ethan, her hands shaking. "You're bleeding," she whispered. He looked at her, pain and disbelief mixing in his eyes. "You're safe. That's what matters. I told you he was dangerous," she said, tears falling. "You didn't believe me." "I do now," he said weakly, and for the first time, his voice cracked. The paramedics arrived, pulling him onto a stretcher. As they lifted him into the ambulance, he reached for her hand. "Don't run this time," he said. "Not from me." She held on until they closed the doors. The rain fell harder, washing away the blood, the fear, everything, except the truth she'd tried to bury. In the hospital waiting room hours later, Ava sat alone, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the white tiles. The detective approached her quietly. "He's going to be fine," he said. The cut was deep but clean. She nodded, eyes glassy. "And Dylan, we'll find him," he promised. "You should get some rest." But she couldn't. She walked to the window, watching the first light of dawn break over the city. It was quiet, fragile, like the moment after a storm, when you're not sure if the silence means peace or the start of something else. Voiceover in Emma's tone. "She thought she escaped once, but healing never comes easy. Sometimes the past doesn't knock, it breaks down the door. The rain had stopped, but the city still smelled of iron and fear. Inside the hospital, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting everyone in pale gray. Ava sat beside Ethan's bed, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He was asleep, a line of stitches tracing his forearm, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat soft against the hum of the machines. She hadn't slept all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the knife, the blood, the look on his face. When he told her not to run. Now in the silence, she realized what those words had meant. Not a command, a plea. She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead and whispered, "I'm not running anymore." A knock broke the quiet. Detective Harris stood at the door, hat in hand. "Miss Monroe, we need a few more details for the report." She nodded, following him to the hallway. "Do you know anywhere Dylan might go?" "He doesn't stay put," she said. "He's clever. He always has a plan." "Well, this time we do too," Harris said. "We tracked a call he made right after the escape. He contacted someone from Cole Enterprises, an employee named Sophie Barnes." Ava froze. "She's the one who framed me?" "So it seems," the detective replied. "We think he's using her for information. If he's still after you, he'll try again. But next time we'll be ready." She went back to Ethan's room, her mind spinning. Sophie. The betrayal made sense now. Dylan had never worked alone. He had always known how to twist people, how to find their weakness. And Sophie's was easy to see ambition. Hours passed before Ethan stirred. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then found her. "You're still here," he murmured. "You told me not to run," she said softly. "For once I listened." He smiled faintly, voice hoarse. "I'm sorry, Ava." She shook her head. "Don't." "I should have believed you," he continued. "I let my fears speak louder than you did." "You were hurt," she said. "So was I. People like us trust doesn't come easy." He reached for her hand, his grip weak but sure. "Then maybe we learn together." Before she could answer, the nurse came in to check his vitals. A few minutes later, as Ava stepped into the corridor for air, her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She hesitated, then answered. Ava came Dylan's voice, smooth and mocking. "Miss me?" Her stomach twisted. "How did you get this number?" "You should know me better than that," he said. "I always find you. What do you want? You took everything from me. My life, my freedom, my reputation. Now I'm taking yours. Step outside the hospital alone. If you call the cops, people die." The line went dead. Ava's hands trembled. She ran to the nurse's station. "I need Detective Harris," she said. But the nurse shook her head. "He just left to check a lead." Her pulse pounded. She glanced back toward Ethan's room, then toward the glass doors at the end of the hall. She couldn't let Dylan hurt anyone else. Not him, not again. She grabbed her coat and slipped out. The parking lot was empty, rain puddles reflecting the hospital lights. "I'm here," she shouted into the darkness. "What do you want?" "Just a conversation," came Dylan's voice from behind her. He stepped out from between two cars, drenched, a gun in his hand. His smile was wrong, too calm, too confident. "You always did like making things difficult." "Put it down, Dylan," she said. "You don't want to do this." "Don't tell me what I want," he hissed. "You think you're better than me now, because some billionaire put a dress on you." "He didn't change me," she said. "He saw me. He'll never love you." Dylan sneered. "He'll use you just like everyone else." "You already did," she said quietly. "And I survived." His face twisted. "Not this time." He raised the gun. A shout echoed through the lot. "Drop it." Ethan's voice hoarse but strong. He was limping toward them, one arm still bandaged. Eyes blazing, Dylan turned the gun toward him. "Stay back, hero. If you hurt her, Ethan said you'll never walk out of here." Big words for a man who bleeds easy. Dylan sneered. He aimed, finger tightening on the trigger, but Ava moved first. She threw herself at his arm, the shot going wide. The sound splitting the night. They struggled, her nails digging into his wrist, the gun clattering to the ground. Dylan shoved her hard, sending her sprawling, then reached for the weapon again, but Ethan was already there, tackling him to the pavement. They fought brutally, rain and sweat blurring together. Dylan slammed Ethan against a car, grabbing the knife from his boot, slashing wildly. The blade caught Ethan's side, blood blooming through his shirt. Ava screamed, grabbing the gun, and firing once into the air. The sound froze them all. "Stop," she cried. Dylan turned toward her, furious, lunging forward. But the sirens cut through the night before he could reach her. Police cars flooded the lot, lights flashing red and blue. Dylan dropped the knife as officers surrounded him. He was dragged away, shouting her name until his voice vanished in the storm. Ava dropped the gun, running to Ethan, who was slumped against the hood of a car. "Stay with me," she begged, pressing her hand against his wound. "Don't you dare close your eyes. You keep saving me," he whispered, voice thin. "I thought I was supposed to be the hero." "You are," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But even heroes need saving." His blood was warm against her fingers. The paramedics arrived, pulling her back. As they lifted him onto a stretcher, she followed, refusing to let go of his hand. As they loaded him into the ambulance, he looked at her, eyes heavy but clear. "You didn't just kiss me that night," he said softly. "You saved me, every damn time." The doors closed before she could answer. She stood there as the ambulance sped away, sirens wailing, her clothes soaked in rain and his blood. Detective Harris approached quietly, hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said. "He won't hurt you again." She nodded, staring into the dark horizon. "He already did," she whispered, "but not enough to break me." The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain and iron, and somewhere beyond the city lights, she knew Ethan was fighting his way back to her. Voice over in Emma's tone, "Love isn't found in perfection. It's born in survival, carved in blood, and proven by the ones who stay when everything else falls apart." The steady beeping of the heart monitor was the only sound in the hospital room. Morning sunlight slipped through the blinds, painting quiet stripes of gold across white sheets. Ava sat beside Ethan's bed, still wearing the same clothes from the night before. Her hair tangled, her eyes swollen but awake. She hadn't left his side since the surgery. Every time the machine beeped, she whispered a thank you to whoever was listening. He stirred finally, a faint movement of fingers against the blanket. She reached for his hand instantly. "Ethan," she breathed. His eyes fluttered open, hazy at first, then clear. When he saw her, his lips curved faintly. "You again." "You sound disappointed," she whispered. "Never," he said, voice hoarse. "I was afraid I'd wake up, and you'd be gone." "Not this time." "Good," he murmured, closing his eyes briefly. "Because I don't think I can lose you twice." She leaned closer. "You're not losing me." He turned his head toward her, the corners of his mouth lifting. "You didn't just kiss me that night," he said softly. "You saved me too." The words broke something in her, all the walls she'd built to keep herself from believing this could be real. "You saved me first," she said, her voice shaking. "That night in the rain, You gave me back my life. I just didn't know it yet." He squeezed her hand weakly. "Then maybe we both needed saving." A quiet laugh escaped her through the tears. "You're terrible at taking care of yourself, you know that I'm learning," he said. "Mostly because you keep showing up when I'm bleeding." She smiled through the ache. "You make it a bad habit." The nurse entered, adjusting his IV, and Ava stepped back. "He's lucky," the nurse said kindly. It was close. When she left, the silence felt different, soft, not heavy. Ethan looked at her eyes, tracing the exhaustion etched into her face. "You should rest," he said. "So should you," she replied. "But I'm stubborn. I've noticed." She moved closer, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "We're quite a pair, aren't we?" "A disaster," he said with a small grin. "But the kind worth keeping." She laughed quietly, then frowned. "What happens now?" "The company, your mother, the press, let them talk," he interrupted. "I've spent my whole life trying to control stories. Maybe it's time I live one instead." "With me?" she asked, barely above a whisper. "If you'll have me." His voice cracked, genuine and fragile. "I don't deserve you, Ava. You don't get to decide," that she said, her eyes wet but steady. "You think love is something we earn. It's not. It's what we give even when we're scared." He looked at her then, with something like reverence. "You make it sound easy. It's not," she said, "but it's real." Days later, when he was discharged, the world was waiting outside cameras' headlines, reporters shouting questions about redemption and scandal. Ethan walked past them without a word, his arm around Ava, their silence louder than any statement could be. The flash of cameras caught their joined hands, the bandage on his side, her steady gaze forward. That image traveled farther than any rumor ever had. In the following weeks, Cole Enterprises rebuilt its reputation. The story changed from scandal to survival. Investors returned, inspired by the narrative they couldn't buy, the one written in truth. Ethan stepped back from public appearances, choosing instead to focus on the work itself, and the employees followed his lead. Behind the scenes, he made one quiet change to the board records, naming Ava as Director of Communications. When she found out, she stormed into his office. "You can't just do that," she said. "You earned it," he replied simply. "Besides, I need someone to tell my story right." "This isn't charity, Ethan. It's trust," he said. "Something we're both still learning." She stared at him speechless, then finally smiled. "You're impossible." "So I've heard," he said. "Now sit down, we have work to do." As the months passed, they found a rhythm that wasn't perfect but honest. They still argued about late nights, about control, about fear, but they always found their way back to each other. One evening after a long meeting, Ethan asked her to stay. The office was empty, the city glittering below. He opened the drawer of his desk and took out a small box. "Don't panic," he said when she froze. "It's not what you think. Not yet." He opened it to reveal a simple silver ring. No diamond, no flash. "What is it?" she asked softly. "A promise," he said, "that I'll never make you doubt again, that we'll choose this every day, even when it's hard." "That sounds a lot like love," she whispered. "It is." He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand trembling slightly. "Marry me someday," he said. "Not for headlines, not for the company, just because it's you." She nodded, unable to speak. Her tears fell onto his hand, and he caught them like they mattered. From the doorway, Margaret Cole watched silently. She had come to confront her son, to remind him of his duty, but instead she saw what duty had never given her peace. Later, she found Ava alone in the hallway. "He's different now," Margaret said quietly. "You did that." "He did it himself," Ava replied. "I just reminded him how." For the first time, the older woman smiled, a flicker of warmth breaking through her polished armor. "Thank you," she said, and walked away. That night, Ethan and Ava left the office together. The rain had returned, gentle and forgiving. They stood beneath it without umbrellas, letting the world blur around them. "I never thought I'd find peace in a storm," he said. "That's because you are always fighting it," she whispered. "Sometimes you just have to let it fall." He leaned down, kissing her softly, not out of desperation this time, but certainty. The city moved on around them, but they stayed still, suspended in a moment that finally belonged to them. Voiceover in Emma's tone. "Forgiveness isn't weakness. It's choosing love over fear again and again, until the pain remembers its place behind you. And when two broken souls stop running, they finally learn what it means to stay." 1 year later, the city of Chicago awoke to a soft spring rain, the kind that kissed the streets instead of drowning them. The skyline shimmered under the gray sky, and on a quiet block near the river, a new sign hung above a modest brick building. "The Haven Project, a safe, beginning for women rebuilding their lives." Inside, the scent of coffee and fresh paint lingered. Ava Monroe stood in the center of the lobby, surrounded by boxes of donated books and folded blankets. She wore jeans and a white blouse, her hair tied back. No makeup, just the calm glow of someone who had built something real. A young woman approached her, maybe 21, eyes tired but hopeful. "Miss Monroe, are you sure I can stay here? I don't have anything, no ID, no money." Ava smiled softly. "You have yourself. That's enough to start with." The girl nodded, tears welling up. Ava placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We don't ask where you came from," she said. "We only care where you want to go next." When the girl walked away, Ava turned toward the large window overlooking the street. Outside, volunteers carried umbrellas, laughing as they unloaded food crates. The laughter felt like sunlight after years of storm. Behind her, a familiar voice spoke. "You've turned a dream into a place, Ava." She turned and found Ethan leaning against the doorway, dressed simply in a gray coat and scarf, a faint smile on his lips. "You're supposed to be resting," she teased. "Doctors said, take it easy." "I tried," he said, "but I got bored. And besides, this place is more relaxing than any penthouse." He stepped closer, looking around at the mural on the wall, a painting of a sunrise breaking through clouds, painted by one of the women who had found shelter there. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "You did this." "We did this," she corrected. "You funded it. I just gave it a name." "You gave it a soul," he replied. She looked at him, that same ache in her chest she always felt when she realized how far they'd come. The man who once lived behind armor now walked among people with his heart uncovered. "How's the company?" she asked. He smiled faintly, still standing. "I resigned last month." What she said surprised. "You loved that company. I thought I did," he said. "But it turns out I just loved fixing things that were broken. Maybe now it's someone else's turn. And what will you do instead?" "This," he said simply. "Whatever this is, help in being here. You taught me that not every empire has to be made of glass and steel." She laughed softly, touched his arm. "You're serious. Deadly." He looked around again, watching the women talking quietly in the corner, one holding a child. "This matters," he said. "This is what we should be building." For a moment, Silence settled between them, the kind that didn't need words. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What's that?" she asked. "A surprise," he said. "It's been exactly 1 year since you kissed a stranger in the rain." She blushed. "Don't remind me." "Oh, I'll never forget it," he said, grinning. "But I thought today deserved something special." He unfolded the paper, a deed. Her eyes widened. "Ethan, what did you do?" "I bought the building next door," he said casually. "We'll expand Haven. More rooms, more people. Maybe even a daycare center." She stared at him. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he said. "It's yours, ours, whatever you want to call it." She blinked away tears. "You're impossible, so I've been told." He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "Don't cry, Miss Monroe. You're the CEO of Compassion now." She laughed through the tears. "That's not a real title." "Then we'll make it one." Outside, the rain thickened slightly, tapping against the windows. A group of volunteers ran inside, drenched and laughing, one of them carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. "For you," Ava one shouted. "The garden's blooming early." She accepted them with a smile, inhaling the scent of wet earth and new beginnings. When she turned back, Ethan was watching her the same way he had that night a year ago, steady, quiet, in awe of her strength. "You know," he said softly, "I still think about that first night, the way you looked when you ran into me." "Terrified," she teased. "Alive," he said. "You looked alive." "I was desperate," she admitted. "And you were the safest mistake I ever made." He laughed. "That's going on our wedding invitations. Don't push your luck." But she was smiling when she said it. He reached into his other pocket, then pulling out a small velvet box. Her heart stopped. "Ethan," she said warningly. "We talked about this." "I know," he said. "No public proposals, no grand gestures." He opened it slowly, revealing a ring, simple gold, no diamonds, just a small engraving on the inside that read, "You stayed." "But this isn't a grand gesture," he said quietly. "It's a promise, the last one I'll ever make to you." She swallowed hard tears, blurring her vision. "You don't have to, I want to," he interrupted. "Ava Monroe, you walked into my life like a storm, and somehow left it calmer. You turned pain into purpose, fear into strength, and me into a man I didn't know I could be. I don't want another year to pass without you knowing that every day I'll keep choosing you." She covered her mouth, laughing and crying all at once. "You're impossible," she whispered again. "And you're mine," he said. "So what do you say?" She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward, cupped his face, and kissed him the way she had that first night. But this time without fear, without desperation. Just love, pure and certain. The volunteers burst into applause, and Ava broke the kiss, blushing furiously. "You planned this," she said, laughing. "Maybe a little. You're incorrigible. You're beautiful," he countered. She rolled her eyes but couldn't stop smiling. The rest of the day passed in quiet celebration. Reporters came by, not for gossip this time, but for the story of Haven, the place built from survival and forgiveness. They asked for photos, and Ava agreed on one condition: no mention of Billionaire or scandal, just a caption that read, "A new beginning after rain." That evening, after everyone left, she stood outside under the awning with Ethan. The rain had thinned to a mist, the air cool and clean. Across the street, the city lights shimmered like stars. Ethan slipped his arm around her shoulders. "You ever think about how far we've come?" he asked. "Every day," she said. "Sometimes it feels like it all happened to someone else." "It didn't," he said. "It happened to us. She leaned into him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. For a long time, neither spoke. The sound of the rain, the soft glow of the street lights, the smell of wet pavement, all of it felt like a memory being rewritten in real time. He kissed the top of her head and whispered, "Thank you," for what she asked, for not giving up on me, on us. "You made it easy," she said. "You showed up. So did you." He tilted her chin, up his eyes full of warmth. "That's all love really is, isn't it? Two people who keep showing up." She smiled. "Then let's never stop." Never, he promised. A car passed its headlights, catching the reflection of the Haven sign behind them. For a moment, the two words glowed brighter than the rain itself. Light after rain. The world felt still suspended between what had been and what was yet to come. Ava looked at the sky, the clouds breaking to reveal a thin ribbon of sunlight. "Look," she whispered, "the rain's ending." "No," Ethan said softly, wrapping his arms around her. "It's just beginning." Voiceover in Emma's tone. "I ran to survive, but I found love, and in that love I found myself again. If you believe love can't find you after pain, think again. Because sometimes the storms we fear most are the ones that finally wash us clean." This is Emma's Stories. Before you go, take a deep breath and think about what love really means to you. Is it the grand gestures, the diamonds, the fairy tale endings? Or is it what Ava and Ethan found, the quiet courage to start again after the storm, the kind of love that doesn't save you from the rain, but stands beside you in it? If this story touched you even a little, if you felt your chest tighten when she ran through the dark, or your heart soften when he said you stayed, then take a moment right now to leave a comment below and tell us what part stayed with you most. Was it the kiss that saved her life or the promise that changed his? Because here at Emma's Stories, every comment you leave is another heartbeat. In this community of dreamers, survivors, and believers, we read them all, every single one. Tell us where you're watching from, whether it's a quiet apartment in New York, a small town in Texas, or a rainy corner of London. And if you're one of those who believes love doesn't exist anymore, I hope tonight proved you wrong, because love the real kind is not loud or perfect. It's patient, flawed, redemptive. It's the moment you choose to stay when everything inside you wants to run. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the little bell so you'll never miss a story that reminds you how beautiful it is to feel. We have more stories coming about love found in the unlikeliest places, about second chances that heal the first wounds, about people who thought they were broken but discovered they were just unfinished. And if this story made you cry or smile, or maybe both share it with someone who needs hope tonight, send it to a friend going through heartbreak or a stranger you think deserves a reminder that it's never too late to be loved right. That's how these stories travel, not through ads or algorithms, but through hearts that still believe. Emma's Stories was created for you, the ones who've been hurt, the ones who've been brave enough to start over, the ones who still wait for someone to look at them the way Ethan looked at Ava under the rain. So stay with us, watch another story, leave a piece of your heart in the comments. And when you do remember, every storm ends, every broken heart can heal, and sometimes love finds you when you least expect it, standing in the rain, kissing a stranger, and realizing that was fate's way of bringing you home. Until next time, this is Emma, and this was The Light After Rain.